committees. So this is what we do every 2 years to assign folks to the liaison positions. We got a lieutenant who was out on email, or the folks that had a preview of this. I know there was a little switching of neighborhood association assignments, but unless there's any other feedback, this is how we're going to be starting off our liaison. If something doesn't work for someone's schedule, we run into anything, we can always adjust things later.
Yeah, I would really love to be on the community building subcommittee because that's the committee that hears project requests, transportation project requests, and I'm not the TBOC liaison, which is that's okay. But yeah, community building just seemed more relevant to my experience, my interest in serving on council. So just make that ask.
Sure. So we have Megan Norris and Mike are also on stewardship, and then Megan Perkins and Stephen Arnold on community building. So Steve, would you be willing to switch maybe to stewardship and start there? And again, we can make adjustments on these partway through the biennium if we want to switch it around, which we have in the past. So
yes, if need be, that I had asked for community building for similar reasons for that, but I'm happy to. The problem with me is that the time of the stewardship is harder for me to make. Yeah,
I think we need to adjust. This time's been, I would say, pretty fluid on both the subcommittees. We can adjust.
For the good of the order, I can.
All right, if we make that switch, is there anything else anyone you wanted to talk about? Again, just is there something that's coming up where you're not making the meetings or you want to switch in the future and just let me know? Did we ever officially do anything about Council on Aging? I know at some point we were going to have some. They had asked for a liaison to their board, and Barb was assigned to that. And I never heard how it went. So what I'll do, that's not really an advisory committee or anything, but I will reach out to them and see if they'd still like to do that. They just were interested in appointing sort of an ex officio counselor to be on their, go to their board meetings. So I'll ask them, and if so, then we can throw that out to the curriculum.
Dan? What is the schedule for the Dishes Forest Collaborative? Is it quarterly or is it just as needed or what's?
I have not been tracking it that closely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's super regular. I think what would be good if you want to talk to Senator Brodman, who was on it before, and maybe get the info from him if you're interested. We just weren't sure exactly how much they were needing, and we were reaching out to them to get more information.
I believe it was quarterly.
Yeah, we can come back on that one as well at a future meeting. Oh, great.
So Steve's going to join
We're
stewardship.
just switching one thing on stewardship, and then we are good to go.
Genius.
Okay. So that will move us forward to the next item, which is our discussing our legislative priorities.
Yeah, so invite your candidate, our city lobbyist, to the table, and we have a few slides to get to. We also have the legislative agenda posted to the bucket, so you can go along in much more detail. I'll ask Kate to provide a little more context and opening remarks to the presentation, and then we'll interject with more information at the end around process and follow-up questions that you need.
And I'm so sorry I'm not actually in the meeting. We have the top of the agenda is looking for the panelist.
And while Kate is bringing that up, Eric, do you want to just go ahead and launch in and just talk about process, the trends, just some opening remarks as to what we're doing with the agenda and what it's being used for to help guide us?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Hello, everybody. For the record, Eric Kanzler, your lobbyist, and welcome to the two new faces, Councilors Platt and Franzosa. It's a pleasure. Look forward to working with both of you. I've been doing this for quite a while now, about a decade plus with the city, and it's been incredibly rewarding, and we've got a lot of big things teed up. This session, a little bit of place setting here. We are now in the second day of session. I was at the Capitol yesterday and this morning. This is a 5-month ordeal. We'll be going through the end of June, and we'll have a couple updates along the way, interim updates as things come together to see if we need to revise priorities or make any decisions or anything like that. So there will be check-ins. This is not the only presentation. We've done something different this year, which is to go through an internal process of setting a detailed legislative agenda. We've always had common themes and established priorities, but in the past, we've never established it quite at the level that we've done here, which you'll see shortly. And we'll walk through the different subject areas and then the different items within the subject areas. So this is intended not to be a set in stone document. This is a North Star. It represents all of the things that, to the extent that we are allocating resources, I think the presumption is they get allocated towards the items on the legislative agenda. Sometimes we play defense. Sometimes the defense is part of the legislative agenda. Sometimes the defense is just what shows up that we have to respond to in the moment. So first slide. Okay, so I believe it won't be till this evening that the matter of adopting the priorities, formally adopting the priorities, is up for your consideration. So we'll be doing a talk through here. At the end of each slide, I can pause and see if there are any questions. I'll also be around for the evening session in case you have any additional questions about any of the items or the agenda overall. Like I already covered the purpose. Items and principles is one way to look at it. This is, again, our North Star, not set in stone. Session timing, without getting into the details, really, you have a period up until April 9th, specifically when 99% of everything is policy. And then you have the first committee deadlines end, and then you have a second period up through late May where it's half policy, half budget. And then the policy committees shut down in late May, and then the rest of it is budget and leadership politics and end games and things like that. So the fast and furious part of the session, with now more than 2,400 bills introduced, is basically now through a committee deadline of April 9th. We will be meeting every Friday, 2 meetings, but really a big legislative team meetings. We've got all the bills that have been tracked, all the bills that have been introduced. I've done an initial run through, advanced them for consideration with Kate and Sarah and staff broadly. And we are endeavoring to trim that down significantly compared to past sessions in an effort to stay focused. We're shooting to keep the bill list under 150 bills, which may still sound like a lot, but you've got other folks in the city world that are tracking 700 or 800 bills. We won't be in that category. And like I said before, there will be a couple council updates along the way, and we'll work on scheduling those well in advance. So let's start with one of the biggest themes here. This really touches on everything that local government does, is where does the revenue come from? And to a large degree, what revenue we receive is limited. In some cases by statute, it's limited. In other cases, property tax, for example, by the Constitution. So we have established a few priorities for council's consideration here. Lodging tax flexibility is at the top. Property tax broadly, and I will say that on lodging tax, there will be specific pieces of legislation, one of which was already introduced. There will be more. We will be having an active, I expect, conversation on specific proposals around that. When it comes to property tax, anything significant has to go to the voters. So the legislature will take a different view. They don't like sending things to the voters unless they're confident that polling is at 60% or better, and then they're confident it'll pass. At this point, we do not have any serious property tax reform proposals in front of us. It doesn't mean that they won't come into existence during session at some point. And then we have a variety of other revenue sources that at base level need to be protected. And there may be opportunities in some cases to expand on them. And there are a couple concepts that we are anticipating that haven't been introduced as legislation around vacant homes, for example, and other things that have a sort of both of a tourism impact and community housing nexus.
I'll speak up here just because I'm now the board for LOC and it's aligned with the priorities for LOC as well as far as revenue reform and the project they've been working. So it makes sense to align with that. And we're not going to fix this ourselves, but to be the coalition of those that are important.
Is help address the impacts of tourism piece. There are other things in play besides
Lodging tax? That would be some of the second home, vacant home tax ideas that are floating around.
Yes.
As far as that, that. I don't know if there's anything out there. I think this is broad enough that we can capture anything that kind of pops up around.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the intent. We didn't want to get the legislative agenda items so specific that they became irrelevant as things change. We want this to be as much as possible durable during session.
So
Any questions on this topic? Or
just generally speaking, Eric, you've been doing this for a while now. Do you, as we go through these, are there some of these where you feel that these are more likely, less likely amongst the group? And if so, could you highlight those? And I'm not going to hold you to it, but I'm interested if you feel like this is a real space that's a target that we can hope for. That would be helpful for me.
I'd just say very high level to that point on this without getting too much into the political nitty gritty. Lodging tax is difficult the possible if we have a smart proposal. I think the proposal needs to have benefit for tourism and the community. Otherwise, most likely it doesn't fare well at all.
I thought the third bullet you're referring to.
The first bullet. Yeah. And then the second bullet, property tax reform, there's only a few things legislature can do. Again, that is a heavy lift to get them to that point where they're willing to advance something to the ballot, which is where it needs to go. I don't predict that anything is lined up well enough for this session. But again, I don't want to throw in the towel. There's always opportunity
Yeah, I
for
appreciate the goal.
creativity.
It's just that your insight is helpful for me. Thank you.
Yeah. And then lastly, there will be dedicated conversations about second homes. And I think they will be fruitful conversations. It's probably a long shot to leave session with a tax on second homes, but I think there's a variety of useful elements to that conversation. And I'd never say never.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did good for you. And is the property tax from, is the idea just here to get a little bit further down the field this session?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a long game, and so I think we want to be consistently signaling that we have been to the legislative saying this is an issue. Let's keep moving forward. Do we need to have a task force? Do we need to have a proposal? I think having this consistently in our advocacy, even if it's not resulting in a bill.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be odd if we skipped a long session. If that wasn't in the priority, people would start questioning the priority, like how committed really are you to it? And I would say one place where we love property tax revenue is community infrastructure that we need for housing and so many other things. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are ideas about property tax reform related to transportation funding packages and things like that. But at present, there aren't any.
Okay, next topic.
Okay, this is a big one for us, and it's got 4 bullets. And so the first bullet really is, and it's shelter continuum for a reason, because it's not just the structures. We have camping. We have a variety of facilities and services that need dedicated funding. It is not, and we have a financial commitment or recommendation from the governor that's pretty good. I think we feel that it is adequate, even if not everything that we want. I think there are some other cities that would like to see more. I think we're feeling pretty good about it. Ben's staff was very involved in getting a solid proposal from the governor on this one that has a lot of legislative support amongst both parties, frankly. So I think there's a lot of work from your staff that you should be proud of, and that'll come into focus here starting in the next couple of weeks.
Just to note that it is a shift from what we have been doing was really managing and kind of partnering with our nonprofits, the shelter system, the flow of money is going to shift through the governor's emergency order framework, which really relies on the continuum of care model, which for us is that Tri-County. So the coordinated housing response office is moving to that Tri-County because the money is moving to the Tri-County, the governance structure, some of the accountability, performance metrics, all of that. So it's moving from a city specific to a more regional level. And as Eric mentioned, we were involved in the recommendations of the work group that has led to this. So we feel like we're in a pretty good position moving forward. It's what will allow us to shift some of those ARPA funds that we have reserved, the money out the door to actually expand some services because of the confidence knowing the state is creating a more sustainable system.
And the plan was never to remain in that. In the long run, it's really more of a county or larger government function rather than just the discrete cities. But when things were tough, the city of Bend stepped up and has continued to ensure that hopefully this will be a smooth and effective handoff, so to speak, to the parties that are going to be assuming the authority and control going forward. I think we're proud of the work that's done and we want to see it succeed regardless. So the second tool is intended to be multifaceted. This is really a big catch-all. There are a lot of housing policy ideas out there, dozens and dozens of bills about housing related policies. Most of them won't move. There's going to be a few dedicated conversations. There's some technical cleanup to the governor's bill from the short session, Senate Bill 1537. There is a middle housing and infill concept that has a lot of good stuff in it, but still some things we have questions about. House Housing Chair Representative Marsh has some concepts. I expect we'll have some concepts from our delegation in the short future, one of whom is a freshman and has put in some bill requests that we'll be seeing shortly. So I think we will spend a lot of time on housing policy related work. And one of the things that's really important for us is we have endured a lot of systems level changes, new regulatory frameworks, which we've supported. We've been, at least at a level, we've been very supportive of the effort to plan for more climate-friendly and equitable communities and to plan for future housing needs. So we're not necessarily complaining about that, but there's only so much that local governments can take in terms of rapid and significant adaptations. Cities in particular have been asked to do a lot lately without a lot in the way of state dedicated resources. So we're going to be looking for things that work. We're going to be looking for resources. We're going to be looking for help implementing these shifts that are underway and focusing on tools that work. And then I think I covered all of it. Yeah.
It's still a huge focus for the governor. It's still a huge focus for the legislature. So this sort of covers the main ways that we want to engage on the housing topic. So any questions on this? Yeah, Councilman Mendez.
Any appetite for reform of construction defect liability that might promote higher rates of home ownership?
That's not there, isn't it?
I do.
That's up there, and we'll have some meetings next week on it.
I think that would fall under the tools that help deliver housing.
Yes.
For sure.
Make it.
That would be a big one. And then please do note the inclusion of infrastructure here, which we'll be talking about more in a second. But it's in there specifically because of the critical nexus with housing, among other things.
No, it's not to say that this ties it parallels the legislative agenda that the Regional Housing Council is.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, speaking of sustainable transportation and infrastructure funding, I think we all know that the gas tax is declining and that the state highway fund is basically trending towards failure, insolvency. Use what dire word you want. And we're looking for a few things out of that. One is, how can that be overhauled to be financially sustainable in the future? Gas tax is going to have reduced buying power. There's a lot of options on the table, and we've had a lot of conversation, but we don't really know what the legislature is preferring. At this point, I think we'll be learning more soon with the Joint Transportation Committee. So we want to play what role we can in forming the legislature about the needs of our communities, things that seem like they'd work, things that seem like they wouldn't work, but really one of many hundreds of team players, hopefully looking for a robust and sustainable transportation funding solution. Within that, there's really two sets of needs that we've determined. One is the consistent need for additional investments in the ons and offs of Highway 97, the ramps, the overpasses, so on and so forth. We've had some big wins in the past. In 2017, all the North End money from the last time the legislature did a large transportation package. We have federal and state success on a bike ped facility at Hawthorne. And we will present at the very end of this, we've done a rundown of infrastructure priorities. That includes transportation, but others. So we can point to those specifically, and you can see where we're focusing on efforts. And then we also have a dedicated focus on transit and bike ped, multimodal facilities and things like that, not just for a variety of reasons. One, that's going to be critical in serving all parts of the city, but in particular, it needs to be bolstered to do infill and mixed housing and a variety of core area, meet a variety of core area goals. It has a clear public safety element and obviously a climate mitigation element as well. Transit, bike ped options, reduced vehicle miles traveled. So we've really determined those two to be top level local/regional priorities that are in many cases facility specific for our community, and we'll illustrate those in a separate document.
Questions on this one, Councilor Reyes?
So on the first one, do we want to or need to say anything about maintaining the 50-30-20 split? It seems pretty important to me to come out on that, just from the discussion. That's the split on the state highway transportation fund. So it's the state, county, cities, 50-30-20. And there's been a lot of concern that may get picked away at, and formulas might change. And I know it's a LOC priority, but just reinforcing that LOC priority and being explicit about that in that first bullet.
Yeah.
Should be the other way around. The main concern is just no reason.
Yeah. I didn't want it to go below 20. It's a great time to talk about a shot. It should be 25, right? Or it should go up, right? Yeah. I don't know if that'd be helpful, Eric, to have that explicitly called out to maintain the split. And I was going to ask about something mentioning, equity for this side of the mountain, equity for our region compared to spending on the other side of the mountains. I don't know how to eloquently word that, but it fits into that bullet, but it might be good to call that out.
I would recommend we call both of those out. I would suggest that you have jurisdictional equity with 50, 30, 20, ODOT getting 50, counties getting 30, cities getting 20. I think we want to at least maintain that. Chances of shifting that would be wading into a huge jurisdictional fight with counties. I'm not sure we'd want to signal that, but I do think it's valid to talk about the difficulty of maintaining city road miles. They're not cheap. So if you want to just look at road miles, there's an argument, counties have so much, cities have so much, but we have greater vehicular traffic, we have bike ped, we have protected safety corridors, we've got turns and all sorts of things that happen in cities that I think are easily lost in this conversation. So I think we'd want to tell our story. We want to at least defend the status quo. Geographical equity is where I think our voice in particular is more needed. And I think those things all go together. This part of the state needs to be represented.
So maybe just a nod ahead so that you're okay with it. And then we'll make that change between now and when you vote on it in the regular meeting, we'll incorporate geographical equity and that we.
I made one other.
I'm not seeing any of the posts that. That's good.
I wondered about adding safety into the third bullet somehow. And I do have a suggestion for it, but it seems to me that it's important. And from the conversations I participated in, it was highlighted a lot and just gets at some other things like safe routes to schools and the various different funding programs. I just think it would help echo primary concern about increasing transit and transportation services and facilities and improve safety for all modes of travel after. But I think getting something in there about safety is important.
Yeah.
In terms of guiding the funding.
That sounds good.
So okay.
Councilor Menace?
One of our goals from the last biennium included wayfinding, but my understanding is that wayfinding was held out. Recreational trails are not intended to be used for transportation. We don't have a definition at the state level of a multi-use path. These kind of things seem like they fall under the radar, but it means that we don't have a wayfinding system, and I don't see that we can get one until we get a state level fix.
I feel like if that could fit under that last bullet, policy to increase services, facilities, and safety. But I think it's good to call it out. We've been talking within Park and Rec about that and been advocating as well.
Good.
So I think we should have that on the list. We don't necessarily need to call it out, but for sure.
Yeah. And I've been at the table and will be at the table on recreational immunity. There is a specific bill in Senate Judiciary that has received the lion's share of the attention. And it's mostly been a local government recreation provider versus Oregon Trial Lawyers Association conversation. It'll continue. I have some hopes of an outcome on that one. And we'll keep trying for it.
Thanks for bringing it. All right.
Okay. Water policy and infrastructure. And there's a couple different components to this. I think we all mostly know, or soon we'll learn, that for basin-wide water policy issues, water management issues, has largely been us participating with the Central Oregon Cities organization and working collaboratively. And they work with non-city entities, irrigation districts, and the counties, and so on and so forth. So a lot of the basin level policy conversation has happened more at a COCO level. There might be certain things that we get a little more involved in ourselves this session. And then there are other issues that are more municipally specific. So anything related to our water conservation efforts, our infrastructure needs. And again, you'll see some water and sewer when we bring up the infrastructure priorities. So there's those three overall buckets, and water reuse falls into conservation as well. So we want really big, effective planning, collaboration at the basin level, and an opportunity to get resources for our own infrastructure needs and for our efforts. I think the city is incredibly proud, rightfully so, of the work that it's done to keep water use fairly consistent, if not decreased, despite a significantly and continually increasing population. So we'll be looking through. And there is a very big water/wastewater package that's been moved out on the House with Representatives Ken Helm and Mark Owens. It's a bipartisan effort that's going to get a lot of consideration. So we will have a lot of individual policy bills to work through. I actually met with Rep. Helm's office this morning. They said right about February 10th is when we're going to want to pay close attention to those water package bills. And yes, Representatives Helm said he'd be happy to meet with the mayor or anyone else we want to bring out to discuss those at that point. Okay. Public safety and wildfire. Does this...
We did roll these up just a little bit so that we did trim just for the sake of being concise. So the full agenda is a little bit more wordy, just.
Sure.
for your warning.
So we're core 3. Sorry.
I was actually going to defer maybe to Eric King on that one.
Yeah, so Core 3 is an effort started about 4 years ago. It's all the public safety agencies in the Tri-County regions, law enforcement, fire and rescue, really assessing the needs for this region. We send all of our folks for law enforcement to Salem, for example, for training. And it can be a backlog to get new officers trained because we've got to send them there and they're at capacity. East side of the Cascades is a receiving center for the big earthquake on the west side or a big event. So if we're going to be a receiving center, we need the resources to do that. And it's part of the state's emergency management plan, as well as identifying Redmond. So the city of Redmond has some land near the airport that they've reserved. We've actually received about 10 million in funding so far through some legislative advocacy. So there's more funding that needs to occur for that facility to be built. So it's going to continue to remain on our legislative agenda. I see this as more of the energy through POCO, because it's a regional effort, but I think we want a companion support on our agenda as well.
And that's a good opportunity to point out that, especially from being on this side of the mountain and being further from the population centers and power centers, what really works to our advantage everywhere possible is unanimity. We've got a lot of different cities with a lot of different needs and sometimes different perspectives, but there are a lot of issues where we are all wanting same thing. And it's important to demonstrate that unanimity where it exists and frankly to strive for it, not just on that agenda item or regional collaboration, but even on our own priorities. For example, the adoption tonight, unanimous support goes a long way. In Salem, they see that as a community united and where we advocate together with other elements of the community. The chamber, for example, this chamber is fairly prominent and I think regarded in the Capitol. So that's one example of a place where we can come not just as a local government bureaucracy, but as a member of a community. And that unanimity speaks volumes where it can be cultivated. So I'll make that point. So back to wildfire. There are a lot of big wildfire conversations happening right now. And we talk about a transportation funding package, for example, which has been very developed and everybody knows about it. There is a comprehensive wildfire funding conversation as well. It isn't yet a package, but they're looking at a lot of different mechanisms, severance tax, kicker. There's a whole lot of funding mechanisms on the table. And the focus of the funding would be the big omnibus bill that was passed in 2021, Senate Bill 762, that has a lot of programs in it. Most of those programs are struggling. It's 2-year funding, 2-year funding, 2-year funding. Some of them get whittled away. And so if the state is going to get ahead of, I think everybody agrees on the importance of doing this and having comprehensive ongoing funding for the state fire marshal's office and so many different programs, but the legislature hasn't yet agreed on a means of providing that stable funding. So that's a big conversation, and we'll be meeting next week with Senator Golden to discuss. I should say there is an issue with how strict can our own building code standard be? Ashland, I believe, pre-established a very strict standard. The state has come in and established baseline. This is the way you all should do it. There are some people who want to be grandfathered by virtue of having codes that they like respected. And then there's other people or other local governments who would like the opportunity to consider that.
Going through
Yes.
the process right now to say, we're going to do our own code.
It sounds very onerous and confusing. And so I think there's some need to make it easier to understand for city to be able to go above the floor if they want to.
I've already been approached in the building about making sure certain people know once we have specific objectives. This is not the kind of thing you ran through, by the way. If we want to do something that building codes really doesn't like, we're probably, so this is one of those situations where to the extent that we decide we want to actively pursue the ability to go above and beyond, we're going to need to talk that through so that allowance exists and so that it isn't a completely open-ended thing and we can do everything we want. We're going to need to get buy-in from other parties at the state level. But I think there should be a willingness to consider that.
Any questions, Elise?
Okay, economic development. Business Oregon has a lot of programs that are Business Oregon. They're the Oregon Business Development Department. A lot of those programs are economic development specific. A lot of them are infrastructure, which of course is supportive of economic development specific. So we'll be looking at their budget broadly, and a number of the conversations that are occurring this session would basically allocate more money to Business Oregon to do new things. The governor, for example, has proposed $100 million in housing supported infrastructure in a new program through Business Oregon. And we're very supportive of infrastructure spending at the state level for housing, given our own limitations in particular. So that's one item. There will be other items, but that's a really big one. Obviously, a lot of collective interest in OSU Cascades, capital funding and ongoing operations funding for our not fledgling anymore. I don't think they're getting to be pretty big and continuing to grow. And it is a challenge getting funding for OSU Cascades at the state level. The state's got the big institutions and then it's got the regionals, and they have dedicated camps, and they all see OSU Cascades as the new college on the block, and they've got concerns about pilfering resources and things like that. So there's a lot of education that this community always ends up doing on the legitimacy of OSU Cascades and the importance and the need and the education desert that it serves. Childcare is a pinch point in this and other communities for a lot of people, families, businesses, children, obviously. I'm not yet sure what priorities we're going to be looking at on childcare yet, but we've got a lens to that, and we will be pulling those bills and opportunities out when identified for additional discussion. And Eric, do you want to say something about the medical practices?
Yeah, this is Councilor Perkins, or Mayor Pro Tem Perkins, has been working, I know, with the chamber, with some medical providers, I think as part of the system development charge discussion that we had last year, and just seeing some of the barriers within more independent practices. And I think for us, opening our eyes to that and saying, how can we help advocate for just the SDC conversation? So this is really aimed at that effort. I don't know.
I think it's just the commitment to, we told them, hey, let us know if there's something that you need things,
Right.
that you need help, that you need advocacy. So I think we just want to have this here, not necessarily that we're going to go around digging for, but when they come and say, hey, there's a bill or there's a this, that we have this ready to say, okay, yep, we've decided to help and support that.
And I think for anybody who went to the City Club thing last week, it really emphasized the importance of work on how do we support independent practices and across the state. And it sounds like there will be some stuff coming in this session that's both at a high policy level and
All right. Any other questions on economic development? Okay.
Environment and climate. And I should say, and it should to some degree go without saying, that we apply this lens to everything. We always want to be responsible when it comes to environmental issues, climate mitigation, and so on and so forth. But we are calling it out here specifically as well. A lot of the planning work and a lot of the infrastructure conversations have a considerable climate mitigation, VMT reduction element. How do you grow sustainably? How do you underutilize land in your community to build in a way that isn't overstraining vehicular traffic and causing unnecessary emissions? So that's always a lens that we look at specifically. And I am not yet aware of state support opportunities for local initiative taking on climate.
Just this is the conversation we funding to be able to implement and make the plans and do all the things that are required. I'm curious to see, especially with if federal support for climate work goes away,
Yeah.
or maybe there are some more deeper.
I would be, if that is inevitable, it's going to happen. It's possible, some degree of it is probably inevitable. We don't know how significant. I would practically guarantee a proud response from the state of Oregon to the extent that happens, at least in terms of priority setting and trying to get something offsetting done. But anything political, of course, is difficult to accomplish. Your point about CFIC is a really important one. We've supported the state's effort to help cities and help support and guide cities. And of course, there's a regulatory requirement to plan better with climate in mind. For the most part, the policy framework is something that we've liked. There's one still tricky element of implementability, like one really big one. But the problem we've had with that is that the state has not offered a lot of financial support to make these massive transitions, which again speaks to the point that I made before. We've had some very weighty systems level changes. There's only so much we can handle. We would still like to get more resources to do that work, which is ongoing effectively.
I think it's a kind of specific thing we know that's just good to keep.
Yes.
All right, other questions on environment and climate? All right, so we had a couple of changes that we brought up that I think we've captured for the year when this comes back in the business meeting.
Just to be clear, so we're going to note geographical equity and maintaining funding allocation from the highway trust fund in that first bullet point. We'll add safety as an element in the third bullet. If possible, try to leave wayfinding in it. It's captured, but I think if we'll put our creative writing hats on, if we can
Sure.
slip that in there, we will. Okay.
If you have another 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yes, sure.
So we've spent quite a bit of time considering top level infrastructure priorities. This is across the different types of infrastructure. So we've got sewer and wastewater, transportation, wildfire mitigation, and septic to sewer funding all in here. And we've ranked them in tier 1 and tier 2 projects. This is a document that is intended to be a public document. So it broadly characterizes the problem and solution and the specific program, the specific projects. Now I want to be careful. We're not going in and saying, give us the money. These are earmark requests. These are illustrative of our needs. Earmark opportunities, program opportunities may emerge. I expect they will emerge, but I don't want to presume that we're going in and asking for this money from the start. Mostly what I'm doing is a lot of outreach and education. And this gets back to financial limitations, revenue limitations, housing needs, permanent rates, all those sorts of things. These are critical projects for us to help legislators understand the issues we're wrestling with and to hopefully compel them to support these needs financially. That starts with the Central Sewer Interceptor, which is a very big project and really ultimately serves all of the core infill areas as well as some of the recent 2016 UGB expansion areas. I think we've estimated that full build out. This is needed to support somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 housing units and almost as many jobs, at least according to some of our planned metrics. We have the Outback Water Filtration Facility on the list as well, in light of hopefully not the inevitability of a wildfire, but we've had some close calls in the past, and Bridge Creek's operation could be imperiled under certain circumstances. So that's a project related to wildfire resilience in particular. I think we probably are all pretty familiar with the funding challenges associated with the, 479 acres southeast part of the UGB expansion. There are supplemental STCs in place there. We've had to get very creative, and really the need is for a couple pretty significant public works projects, mainline, pump station, some decommissioning. The public works itself will unlock 1,230 homes, 2,800 jobs, and we're waiting. We have to take time to generate this money slowly and with political capital because the reserves and the funding mechanisms just aren't there. So those are the ones we position as the top tier 1, although all of these are important. And now we get into, we mentioned before, the Highway 97 interchanges. Colorado ramps are going to be critical for serving infrastructure, housing need, or infill housing needs, I should say. All of these have a public safety and a bike ped element, but there's a concentration of infill housing near that interchange that's already, I think, as we all know, overwhelmed at Colorado Street at certain hours. Empire, we have long listed a need to improve the ingress and egress at Empire, which is distinct from the North End investment and the amount that we received from the state in 2017. And this was even articulated back then as a distinct project. It remains a need for us now. Moving on to the next page, there are a variety of protected bikeway goals throughout the city, including a north, south, east, west structure, and what we'll show a map here in a little bit. So we are seeking money for Oregon, doing outreach and education with the intent of hopefully having an opportunity to seek state support for multimodal facilities bike ped. We are being less specific about which exact priorities we're highlighting at this point in time. I think the point is there is a need for a network to serve the entire community, again, as well as to hit climate goals, infill goals around CFEC and other regulatory requirements. And then we have septic to sewer is a programmatic investment in failing septic systems. Some cases, the appropriate thing is to replace a failing septic system with a new septic system. inside a city, I think for the most part, we're talking about, and there's proximity, within 200 feet of a main, you must. There are places where a failing septic system must lead to a sewer conversion. There's an existing program that we had a part in initiating back in 2015, I think it was, and it makes money available to municipalities to help, in particular, low-income individuals who need to make these transitions, which can be very expensive. So Ben has been a lead adopter of that program, and there's a little heat map on the next page that get to the map. So you can see the bike ped in blue dashes. You can see the heat map, which is, I believe, where we've historically utilized septic to sewer funding. You can see the Outback facility all the way to the west with the blue dot in the southeast. You can see the wastewater improvements there. There's a red line that sort of ends up coinciding with the bike paths from the downtown heart. That is the Central Interceptor. And then you can see 3 distinct projects along Highway 97. That would be Empire, Colorado, and Murphy, which was the final tier 2 priority on our sheet.
And that heat map, the yellow is just saying that there's a higher density of people who need assistance.
That's
that
where
need to convert.
That's where we deployed.
I think that's where we've deployed, but I'm
Okay.
actually not
Yeah.
sure.
Is it?
Okay, really deployed so far.
Southeast
Okay.
and Southwest, which are the
Kings
most
Forest.
Yeah, that's where the greatest need is.
And we have a great program that was community created that we can just plug money into if we generate more funds. Okay, great. Any questions about this? And move on to our next.
Would funding any of these, for example, would funding any of them reduce SDCs for infill projects?
Southeast area for sure. We just did a
Definitely.
supplemental SDC. So we could maybe take a look at if we needed that, if we got some
And
capital.
reduce it.
Any other
Same thing
ones
for the
that-
core area, I think, because those interceptors are always contemplated that people are going to be paying in with SDC.
So there would be a link to reduced development costs and for those.
Could do. Is you remotely were doing that's what's correct. And then the planning solutions for that would help us within time.
Thank you.
And the impact on SDCs is an important one. There's a lot of people at the state level who want to see SDCs lowered, but oftentimes those proposals are not accompanied with another form of revenue to provide critical infrastructure, without which the houses can't be built at all.
Great work on this. Thank you this is more detailed than we've had before, and it's really helpful, and I think really sets us up well for the session.
And Kate and Sarah and staff have done an amazing job
Yeah.
on that one. I just copy edit for political viability.
All right, cool. We'll see that back in the business session. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of you are connected to networks through LOC or others. So if there's ever any, hey, what about this bill? Or through my affiliation with an association, please reach out to myself or to Kate and we'll make sure we get connected. Because there's just a lot of volume and things can get missed pretty easily.
Yeah.
We're
And
happy
we
to
don't
get
have,
that.
should we write a letter on the school board would like some support with this? That will come up through the session, and we'll try to, as much as possible, have it. If it's not aligned with something we already said as a priority, to bring that to the group to make sure that's okay for the group to advocate for.
What's the total number of bills that are, I heard some crazy numbers.
1,000 or something.
2,284 were filed before session started, which is the bulk of them. We've seen about 300 since. I expect another 500 to 600 more, maybe. 3,000 plus, yeah.
Aren't you glad we don't come to the beginning of these with lists of things like
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Then next, we are going to get into our report from our community survey that was performed last December.
So my pleasure to introduce Michelle Neese. She's the president of David Tippett and Mitchell, or DHM, as they're commonly known. DHM has historically conducted this survey, which coincides with our council goal development, which helps to build our 2-year budget. It's a chance for us to really understand what a representative sample of Bend residents, how they view quality of life, Bend services, prioritize goals. Gives us an opportunity to get that input to help us prioritize goals from our community. So Michelle's going to share the summary of the information from the report. We're working on some of this information in a little more detail to share with you as part of the council goal input packet that will go out probably late next week.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for having me here today. As Eric said, this is a survey that the city of Bend invests in every 2 years, and it allows you all to check in with how residents are feeling, satisfaction with the state services, because it has been happening consistently over time. There's additional value to being able to interpret what the numbers mean when you look at historical context. That benchmarking is really helpful. And there's also room that we leave in the survey to swap in questions that reflect current concerns, emerging priorities. You strike that balance of the historical context, but also getting the new information that you need. Hopefully that helps you all as you go into your planning. We are today showing you results from that representative survey. And it was a survey of 400 Bend voters. We do a mix of live calls by phone and then also text some people and ask them to take it online. This is, as you probably are well aware, this allows us to meet people where they are in the sense of they can, if they're people who are going to be more likely to respond to text, they have that option. And then some people still prefer to talk on the phone. So that's why we continue to do both. It takes about 12 minutes. We do set quotas by several demographic variables: age, gender, race, education. And then the quotas and sometimes a little bit of weighting help us ensure that is representative. And then we do also work with the city to have an online opt-in survey that goes out after. And this allows anyone who wants to take the survey. And this survey had a very robust response of 1,335 Bend residents. Now, quite often this opt-in survey looks different than the representative survey, and that was true this year as well. So people who took the opt-in survey are higher income, have higher levels of education, are more likely to be homeowners, and are less likely to be people of color compared to the representative survey. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. All the charts I'm showing you today are from the representative survey. And if I call out differences, I will do it verbally or it will be in the notes of what you get. But what you're looking at is representative results. And both surveys are available in Spanish and English. And there were live interviewers in Spanish as well. Okay, so to start with, what you see here is just overall ratings of quality of life. And so the 81% is the people who said it is excellent or good living here in Bend. And what is there is a clear uptick from what we found in 20. And at that time, I presented a comparison to the state overall, and that's still relevant. This parallels what we've been seeing statewide. 2022, coming right out of the pandemic, voters were pretty sour in their mood. And it was even more marked in other communities. Bend has traditionally enjoyed relatively positive views of your residents. And even when you dipped, you didn't dip as low as other places. And we also have been seeing this recovery in other cities. And in many places, that their ratings are still somewhat on the low side. And you can see a pretty good recovery here in Bend. So overall, this is great news about how the city has been moving in the past 2 years. Okay. We also asked people an open-ended question, which is, what is the one issue that you think leaders should address in your community? And here, the size of the circle kind of corresponds to how many people chose something in that theme. So the orange circle in the middle is what we called social issues, which by far and away the most common social issue people brought up is homelessness. And many of these comments, they can write this as an open-end question. They can word it however they wish. Many of those comments are fairly generic, just homelessness in general, and don't necessarily tell us exactly what they want, but that is the most common response. You can also see that housing costs and availability is important to people. And then there to the right in a bluish color, transportation issues, which is another big bucket this year, with the most common issue within that being congestion. And then finally, in upper left is in green is growth. And what is that? Your residents are mentioning the amount of development and concerns about it being too much. The top 3 general categories, homeless, affordable housing, and transportation, those have been top issues for the past several rounds of this survey. And this shows you what percentage of people mentioned those. in the 2 previous surveys as well. And what you can see is homelessness shot up, right, quite a bit from 2022, has remained high. And then transportation maybe was alleviated somewhat in 2022, but is once again edging out above affordable housing as a concern on people's minds right now.
But just for context, this was in December 2020 when it was the survey, right? So we had just found the transportation bond and all year talking about leading up to, and then in the first couple of years, not a lot of projects, and now a lot. So I think that 2020 is especially to transportation because of that bond conversation that he was having, but not surprising that it's still up there.
And this reflects people having to make a choice. I'm asking you to rank things, right? And so
Not this one, right?
This one is,
this is,
what's the one issue?
this is the pressing issue. Who ranks which one? Okay.
And then, or they mentioned we code it. And then in terms
Are
of,
given a choice, or this is what they hold out of there?
this is what they fold out
Do it.
and are coding of their responses. City performance, going to dive into a little bit of that. This is more general ratings. And here we asked people to just give a letter grade, right? A, excellent, B, above average. This is mirroring the results for quality of life. There was an increase this year compared to 2022 of people saying the city was an A or a B to 54%. I do call out here that the opt-in survey, people were a bit more negative, 38% there gave the city an A or a B. This sort of helps illustrate why a representative sample is super important, because people opting in are quite often either strong supporters or people who have critical feedback they would like to share. And so in this sense, I would say that was true in this case as well. And then just to call out, because we're showing you A and B, then about 28%, so close to 3 in 10, gave the city a C, which I might say has been neutral. But overall, still people are positive or neutral, and you're not seeing a high percentage of negatives in this question. And we also asked people to rate specific services. And here I'll just call out the asterisk. Our questions where we had modified or changed the wording in consultation with the city, of course. And here we're asking them to rate specific services. You can see that residents are most satisfied with water and police and fire services, with majorities giving those to an excellent or good rating. You can see that satisfaction is lower for maintaining the transportation system and for permitting services. I did want to call out, it's interesting that 15% are not sure, that's that far right, far in light gray, about how well the city is doing with maintaining transportation system. And then even slightly more close to 1 in 5 are uncertain about how the city is doing with building, planning, and permitting services. That one's probably not surprising because there's a good number of people that don't ever have to interact with that service per se. And also the people who do, however, have some fairly strong opinions about that. Okay, so now just getting into a little bit more of budget and service priorities. We ask people, we give them a little bit of context and say, the city of Bend is facing many issues. We'd like to know what priority you would give to each of the following services. And then we give them the option to say urgent, high, medium, or low. And so what you're seeing here is really the percentage of people who rated each of these either urgent in dark orange or high priority in the lighter orange. And so overall, based on those ratings, the 3 issues that rose to the top as being most urgent were street maintenance, affordable housing, long-range community planning. Again, there's a consistency between what they said in that open-ended question and what you're seeing here. And then affordable housing in particular, that 33%, 1 in 3, are rating that urgent priority. So that's where you get that sense of urgencies around affordable housing, and community planning also rises to the top in urgent priorities.
So was this one where you could, if you wanted to say everything's urgent, you could?
You could. We could. We do, the instructions say, please be selective, but obviously people can do what this does. And then because of that very issue, because some people might say everything's priority, we then force them to say which one. Okay. And when we force them to say, pick one of those, again, not a surprise, right? Affordable housing is clearly the one most people would pick as the single one to focus on. And then here in gray, white in the screen, you see what they said in 22. So again, affordable housing has been the top issue for the past couple rounds of this survey. You can see community planning has also been consistently up there as number 2. What is a little bit different this year is that street maintenance edged out police services as the number 3, whereas back in 2022, police department services was higher. And I just historically want to remind us that back then was sort of a bit of a peak of some concerns about police funding in the wake of George Floyd. And so that was a much more prominent issue for people at the time, whereas street maintenance has clearly become more of a top of mind concern. New, down further in the list, is strategies to address climate change. 4% mentioned that as a top issue. I just wanted to call out that was a new response added this year in line with the council's priorities. Now I'm going to show just a little bit more detail on those top issues. So first, housing. This is, again, a different way of illustrating what you just saw. There on the left is just the number of people who said this was urgent or high this year and in 2022. So you saw that in a bar form. It's the same number. And then on the right, again, you see that affordable housing is clearly the top one issue for people. Here, I show you a big group of the percentage of people in all different types of categories who said affordable housing is a top priority. So the yellow line is the baseline of 50%. And what you can see is that majorities of every demographic group said this is a top priority. And then what on the left, a couple of groups where there are significant differences that we wanted to call out. So first of all, you can see renters are much more likely to say this is the top priority, right? 85% of renters say that is a top priority versus 55% of homeowners. Again, not surprising, right? Like renters are facing today the acute problems of housing costs, and homeowners they already own their home. They may have entered the market years ago. And so today's housing costs may not be as prevalent might not rise to the top for them, whereas it does for renters. And this is again where I also want to remind you that opt-in survey had a higher percentage of homeowners. And so that's again why hearing from representative sample gives you a really good picture of, in this case, I would argue people who are more at risk with the problems of today's housing issues. You can also see that lower income people and also people living in Northeast Bend are more likely to say affordable housing is a priority. But again, the main point being that it's majorities of all groups say that this is a top issue. In terms of growth, again, just reminding you, growth was 60% of people say this is a urgent or high priority. It was the second highest issue they wanted the city to prioritize. Here we did a follow-up question that said, okay, if we're focusing on growth or on housing, on managing growth, what should we focus on? And so the residents clearly said that the 3 issues or the 3 things to most focus on are 1, access to affordable housing. So again, overlapping with the affordable housing issue, ensuring the transportation system can handle the people who are coming in, and then protecting open spaces in natural areas. This question is not necessarily asked every year. We asked something similar before, and what we added this time was protecting the open spaces. And I'm not surprised to see the support for that because, again, for a long time, historically looking at the different surveys, you can see that access to outdoor areas is a priority for many people in Bend. And so that rises to the top And here again, that opt-in survey, protecting open spaces was actually even more important in that survey. But again, it's homeowners who may not have that same drive or need to find affordable housing.
On this one, was it an open-ended response, or did you provide this menu?
We provided these
Okay, thank you.
options. And then just looking at transportation a little bit more, we did ask people to rate road and street conditions in Bend and pedestrian and bike safety in Bend. Majorities of people, in this case, it turned out to be 65% each, said roads and streets or pedestrian bike safety are good or excellent. Most of those are in the good category. So we sometimes call that soft positive, right? So not as many are saying it's really excellent. And I will also point out that in the opt-in survey, because we had 1,300 people take it, we had more people who said walking or biking was the primary mode of transportation. So that allows us to look at differences a little bit with more power than I could in the representative sample, because the vast majority of your residents use cars as their primary mode of transportation. But when we could look at the opt-in survey, ratings were much lower for people who walk or bike. And so again, that's where, in that case, the opt-in survey is helpful, that the people, again, they're probably taking it maybe because they had concerns, but also you had just more people in that bucket in the opt-in survey to hear from, and they had more concerns. Finally, we wanted to give you a little bit more detail on the climate change. Remember, I said that was new. 36% of people said it was an urgent or high priority, so it's not quite up there in the top level. Nonetheless, I will point out that 16% said it was an urgent priority. So if this is important to you, you feel very strongly about it. And that 16%, again, puts it in the top 3 of people saying an urgent priority. Just there's a couple different ways of interpreting those results that you should think through and pay attention to. We did, in this case, also ask them, given that what the city could do to address climate change at the local level, which 2 would be your top priorities? And so here you see the highest number of people endorsing the idea of encouraging energy efficiency in new homes or buildings, and then also reducing waste in construction and demolition. So both preventing waste and recycling or composting the waste that is created. And then less support for the ideas of transitioning an entire community to renewable energy or promoting alternative ways of getting around in electric vehicles. Again, 1 in 5, but clearly the top 2 there are energy efficiency in homes and reducing waste. Okay. And that is the end of the results for today. And as Eric mentioned, there will be more information coming in your packet. Are there any questions?
And the question tells a burden. One is a comment, one is a question. So the poll said it was asked as open, and that was the result of open-ended response at the beginning, but then it was not ever like a selection after that, because it goes 40% urgent priority, but then we never hear from it again, like, because it was not one of the selections later on in the.
Correct. We didn't have more questions specific to homelessness, partly because it's about what can the city be doing. And 2 years ago, we did get into some questions, and then you have the residents aren't always sure what's
It was a little different
Yeah, no.
2 years ago, because we actually had ARPA funds. Those funds are now expended. We're relying kind of more on the state system, and it's not a city kind of core function. So we just felt like it was, would we misalign expectations if somebody said want to do something versus.
And this is definitely the 3rd time I've asked this. Did anyone fill out the survey in Spanish?
Yes, I know that 4% of the representative one was taken in Spanish. So that's roughly 16. It could some weighting, so that might be a little bit less. And then I do not have at my fingertips how many took the online one in Spanish, but yes, people did take it.
Remember, like 1. I mean, hard for
Yeah.
Look has ability.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do like to say that it's like it's building an ongoing relationship and trust, and we continue to try to hopefully get better as well on our end but it's not necessarily something we can target.
I think having insurance representative is important.
And offer an option. I mean,
And the more people are just refusing to participate if they're contacted in some way that might be Spanish speakers, is probably what's happening here.
It's more like if we call someone, we can, one, if they don't pick up the phone because they are assuming that it's only in English or something, I can't
you
stop
want
that. I know the city does release a press release saying that calls would be happening. So we're trying to set the ground for people to know that's a possibility. Like I said, we do have interviewers live who speak Spanish. So if we can tell that's a Spanish speaker answering, we're immediately ready to have that Spanish option highlighted and ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Show presentation will look forward to the full report as well with all of these super helpful. Thanks. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
We're going to take a 15-minute break and then come back for our listening session. So folks who are here, make sure to sign up with the warrant if you want to speak during our listening session, and then be back at 9. You will go ahead and reconvene the Bend City Council for our planned listening session leading up to our helper goals. So this is the time for community members and organizations who've been invited to give input on areas they want us to focus on in the next 2 years. We're going to be having speakers come up and have about 5 minutes each. So it's going to be 5 minutes from our timer up here. For anyone who's watching this online or a video later, there are also other ways to give us your input. Of course, always you can just email us at councilall. And there's some in-person open houses that are happening that I want to mention. Thursday, 2 to 3:30 at Larkspur Community Center, Classroom A. That's Thursday, January 23rd, so that's tomorrow. This Saturday, the 25th, 9 to 10:30 at the Council on Aging. And Monday, January 27th, 3:30 to 5 p.m. at the downtown Bend Library. There'll be city staff, there'll be counselors there for anyone who has to give us input in person who couldn't maybe make it tonight. I'm just going to call through the folks that I've got my sheets here for. And please introduce yourself and whether you live in the city of Bend. If you're with a group, let us know what group you're with. And you'll have 5 minutes to give us your input. This is a listening session for input into council goals. We have a visitor section for our business meeting that's more general. This is really just for council goals. So we really want to hear what you want our priorities to be from your perspective. So we will start with Robin Church, if you want to come on up.
I've got a long case of like
And I think, have we said it, Rob Morgan? Sorry, not Robin, you're Morgan. It will make a little beep when you're done, just to warn people about that. We're trying that out tonight and see how loud and weird it is. And if it's okay, we'll keep it. And if it's not, we'll turn it off. Okay, go. Try.
My name is Robin Church. I'm the Fire Risk Coordinator for Three Pines HOA in Bend. I also serve as the Emergency Preparedness Lead for the Summit West Neighborhood District and Secretary of Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition. My colleagues and I strongly encourage Council to review and strengthen city ordinances, design guidelines, and policies related to wildfire, hazard reduction, and resiliency in Bend as part of your biennial goals. Bend is not immune to catastrophic fire. However, reducing its devastating impact upon whole communities calls for a more comprehensive approach to mitigate risk across neighborhoods and address existing gaps in current code. There are a number of known but overlooked vulnerabilities that are being built into Bend's new housing stock, such as insufficient vent screening, the absence of low elevation deck screening, and combustible fencing. On that, I'd like to speak a little bit further. Bend currently allows combustible fences to be attached to or erected within 3 inches of the siting of new homes being built in the wildland urban interface, even those deemed high hazard on the Oregon Wildfire Hazard Map. In contrast, a fully non-combustible 5-foot zone is recommended by Bend Fire and Rescue, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and others based on current science. Combustible fencing and wind were the contributing factors in the 2021 Marshall Fire. This was Colorado's most destructive fire that tore through 1,600 acres. They're roughly the size of the Summit West neighborhood district in only 12 hours, destroying 1,000 structures. Many of them were connected with combustible fencing. So at the very least, we asked the city of Bend to address fencing attachments. Moreover, because draft state codes do not address fence attachments, Bend has the ability to adopt standards above state code, as other cities like Ashland, Oregon, has done. Homeowner association rules may prevent the use of fire-resistant materials or the replacement of combustibles like wooden fence attachments. Indeed, restrictions are notoriously difficult to amend in active HOA communities, let alone those with inactive HOAs. The bottom line is that adoption of next generation fire resilient codes has been strongly recommended for cities like Bend for quite some time, most recently in 2022 by the U.S. Fire Administration, FEMA, and the Wildland Fire Leadership Council. So wildfire science continues to evolve to review and strengthen city ordinances, guidelines, policies, codes, and practices to improve Bend's fire resiliency for generations to come. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for your serious consideration of this input. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Laurence Lemercier, Firewise representative for Skyliner Summit in Bend and member of the Deschutes County Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition. That's a mouthful. The mission of our coalition, now 100 members strong, is to support Project Wildfire's mission by improving fire-adapted readiness one neighborhood at a time. Our coalition has been meeting monthly since October 2023, and during our January 16 meeting, Robin Church, also a coalition member, presented her proposition to address the City Council regarding, as you have just heard, the need for stronger guidelines, ordinances, and policies related to wildfire hazard reduction and resiliency. She also shared the concern about combustible fencing. As a representative today of the Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition, I want to share that our group is endorsing and supporting the message presented here today by Robin. I also met yesterday with the board of Deschutes County Rural Fire District 2, and their members unanimously endorsed the message as well. As Firewise representatives, we walk our neighborhoods quite often and see the many vulnerabilities still present and needing to be addressed. Our role is to inform, encourage, and recommend to each owner in our neighborhoods the importance of working on fuel reduction on the 0-5 feet zone around their house. If the City Council of Bend decides, as suggested by the letter from Robin Church, that the need for stronger policies or ordinances related to wildfire hazard reduction should be a priority goal for their biennial planning, and subsequently, if the city adopts those strengthened policies and ordinances, it will facilitate the work of volunteer Firewise representatives and certainly make our town more resilient to wildfires. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the work you do.
Hello, and thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. So I am Cheryl Stark. I am the chair for the Summit West Neighborhood District. One thing I just want to say as I prepare all this and share with you is our neighborhood district doesn't take positions specifically on any initiative. What we really do is focus on our constituents and our residents and businesses in the Summit West area. And so that's what I want to share with you today. So last week we surveyed our residents and businesses in the Summit West neighborhood. The goal of our survey was really to understand what's most important to them and of what's most concerned to them. And again, the residents. We mailed our survey to 613 email addresses. We had 155 responses, which is about a 25% response rate. So I feel pretty good about that response rate. And I want to share the feedback from our residents on the 3 highest ranking concerns, along with, depending on the time, a few writing comments. And a key point to keep in mind is that, a lot of the feedback I get from our residents is they don't feel their feedback is really being listened to or having action taken on. I think a big gap in that is communication. And I really encourage the city council to help utilize us as neighborhood districts to help get the communication back out of what's happening and what the updates are. So on our survey, there were 3 top concerns, probably not going to be a surprise to anyone. Wildfire preparedness, traffic, so car traffic, parking, street safety, and then development, both commercial and residential. So as I summarize the feedback, you're going to notice that they're really all very much interrelated, correct? So I'm going to develop and build more housing or residential unit. It's going to create more traffic. And now people are concerned about how do I evacuate because now it's gridlock. So while they're the 3 top concerns, they're definitely very interrelated. So first one, wildfire preparedness. So our residents and businesses in the Summit West neighborhood are overwhelmingly concerned about wildfire preparation, both in the building codes, preparing for wildfires themselves, like learning how to do that and harden their homes, as well as evacuation routes. They're really especially concerned with gridlock, with only a few roads available for evacuation, depending where, let's assume it's a fire, where that fire comes from. So really, in the simplest form, they really want an evacuation plan. They want to know where they can go to get this information. They want to be prepared. So when it happens, that they know what to do and they know how to best keep their family safe. In that survey, and Robin had the same question, we asked the question, should the City of Bend review and strengthen city ordinances, design guidelines, and policies related to wildfire hazard reduction and resiliency? The overwhelming answer was yes. 81.9% of those 155 respondents said yes. And of those 155 respondents, 98% of them live or work in the Summit West Neighborhood District. As a representative for those residents and businesses in the Summit West, I'm really asking you, the City Council, to incorporate some of that emergency preparedness, specifically wildfire preparedness, a lot of the things that were already shared with you in those building codes, creating and publishing some type of evacuation plan for our residents, and put those in your goals for the next 2 years. The second most, this was concerning, the second most concerning issue was traffic, car traffic, parking, street safety. The residents and businesses are very concerned about the street safety. As Summit West has grown over the last 5 to 10 years, the main thoroughfares are more heavily used. Speed limits have been reduced, which is great. However, residents continue to see cars speeding, especially on Mount Washington and Shelburne Park Road. Those were the two in the feedback. The people could write in their feedback that we heard. I personally hear their frustration as I provide them the slowdown signs. While they're super excited to get those signs, there's a little bit apprehension about, will they really work? I've even had people come and get a second sign because their sign was mysteriously disappeared from their home. So I also provide them with the non-emergency police number where they can talk with somebody. And then we use that feedback in the annual request for the mobile speed units. So we use their request.
Ooh, okay. That's pretty rock. So, we'll close the 5 minutes.
Okay.
To make sure we get through everyone. I would love if you would make sure to email us.
And that was going to be, that's my end, is I have everything all in an email along with the survey results to provide that for you. Okay. Thank you. Oh, when I practiced, it was only 3.
All right. Next is Jeff Conrad. And he's got a survey here that I'm going to pass down to the sample.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Conrad. I'm a board member of the Auburn Butte Neighborhood District. Thanks for the opportunity to provide the input tonight. In order to meet or provide council with accurate representation of what district members feel are the most significant issues facing our residents, our board surveyed our 1,349 registered members. The 12-question survey was fielded between January 5 and January 14. The survey was designed to help the board better understand A, the existing level of members' awareness of city governance processes, and B, the city-related issues that are most important to our residents. 262 members completed the survey in its entirety, yielding a 19.4% response rate. Tonight, I'll provide you with member feedback from Part B of that survey regarding the issues deemed most important to the members. The survey asked respondents to score 11 different issues of public policy that most directly affect their quality of life in Bend. Respondents also had the opportunity to provide written narrative to the issues. The top 5 issues identified by members in order of importance were wildfire, traffic congestion and safety, local taxes and fee burdens, cost of homeowners, renters insurance, cost of utilities. It's really important to note here that not only was wildfire ranked number 1 issue, but to realize that a high percentage of the surveys were actually completed by the first day of the LA wildfires. So they weren't necessarily skewing big time the results. Wildfire is important to our members. While a list of top issues is helpful, it's also important to have a feel for the sentiments voiced in the narratives associated with their responses. So given this limited time tonight, I'll provide an overview on just 2 of the narratives for the top 2 issues, wildfire and traffic congestion and safety. Beginning with wildfire, which was ranked first, the written narratives support the themes of
wildfire prevention, preparedness, and policies. Summarizing these various narratives, I would include the following. Mandate Firewise USA mitigation measures across neighborhoods. Provide funding to homeowners and support debris and fuel removal efforts. The city should implement plans to remove flammable debris from public lands, including the Aubrey Butte cell phone tower area and neighborhood parks. Minimize homeless encampments in our forest and other high-risk areas. Provide fire evacuation plans and defined routes. And to the degree that they can, the city should urge neighborhoods and HOAs to align tree removal policies and approvals with Firewise USA mitigation efforts. For the number 2 ranked issue, traffic congestion and safety, the narrative themes included speeding, bike and pedestrian traffic, road construction, population growth, and traffic congestion. Summarized comments included speeding and lack of police enforcement, particularly on Mount Washington, a disproportionate investment focus on bike and pedestrian lanes to the detriment of vehicle traffic. Another one, Bend's current transportation system plans will not support the 20-year population forecast of 150,000. Gridlock will be our future buzzword. Traffic congestion at many intersections is already unacceptable, specifically Mount Washington and 3rd Street, the Newport Greenwood intersection with Wall Street, and Empire at Highway 20. Thanks for your time tonight. Thanks for listening, and I'll send a copy of the survey to all of you.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Tyler Neese, and I'm the Government Affairs Director. I'm a resident of Bend. I guess I'm supposed to say that, right? Resident of Bend and Government Affairs Director for the Cascades East Association of Realtors, formerly the Central Oregon Association of Realtors, so we have a new name. On behalf of our organization, thank you for the opportunity to provide input into Council's goal-setting process and to be able to weigh in as part of this listening session. When asked what the city's greatest challenge is at Council's last biennial goal-setting listening session, we said housing production, and I can tell you today that opinion really hasn't changed. We still believe that is the top challenge that our city faces. The city's prioritized housing and taken a number of actions to move the needle, from Stevens Ranch to recent support of UGB expansion under SB 1537. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee continues to provide critical support to a number of projects, obviously throughout our community, and is a model throughout the state. These are just a few examples, and we commend council and staff on your ongoing commitment to housing solutions, which is very clear. But chipping away at our housing availability and affordability challenges is no small lift, and we still have a ways to go. Our ask tonight, as you begin to gather input and look toward your goal-setting process, can really just be summed up as please keep your foot on the gas in terms of housing production as you move forward. Specifically, we urge council to maintain UGB expansion as a priority in order to annex new lands into the city and provide housing options. As this process gets underway, proactively working to service these areas is obviously critical, providing the needed infrastructure. I know you've heard this from us before, but I think it's also important to note that in this housing environment, any policy with the potential to impact cost or availability of housing should be carefully scrutinized. The electrification policy options currently under consideration, which includes some potential regulatory actions, is an example of a policy that could carry potential impacts on cost of housing, and we urge you to apply that lens when deliberating on these types of policies moving forward. Speaking of a lens, you'll hear from Partners for Affordable Housing during this process, which is a broad and diverse coalition focused on increasing housing supply and options. We're proud to be a part of this group, along with a number of other community members and organizations. We fully support its recommendation that the city adopt a pro-housing lens used to examine all policy decisions. We believe this is a step that just formalizes the city's commitment and is something that is certainly warranted in this housing environment. Finally, we encourage council to continue to make housing production a priority when determining the city's legislative agenda as well, which is something I know you just talked about here recently today. Bend has been a model in effectively utilizing programs that allow more flexibility with land use in the UGB process. Expanding these programs and supporting creative solutions will not only help Bend and our community, but all of Oregon as we work to address the housing supply gap statewide. In closing, we all know there's no silver bullet, but as you start this process and listen to various stakeholders and community members, I'm confident that a lot of the feedback you're going to get is probably going to reflect and mirror the survey that you sent out to the community previously, where you'll see that along with fire, a lot of the other important topics that community members are talking about, I think housing will still be at the top of that list. And I think you'll also find that in getting that type of feedback, it's clear that there's a lot of folks within this community that are very invested in finding solutions. So I would just, as some parting words would say, let's all work together to do just that. We're happy to be a resource and happy to work with the city on these efforts. And we thank you for your time and consideration as always. Thanks for your service to the city.
Thanks, Tyler.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Holcomb. I live in Bend. During the day, I'm the development director for Deschutes Land Trust, and I also serve as the board chair for Envision Bend.
Matt Muchness, the executive director of Envision Bend. Good to see you all and welcome new council members.
So we're here today on behalf of Envision Bend, along with long-term board member Ted Schoenborn, as a local nonprofit, nonpartisan organization whose mission is to bring stakeholders together to educate, engage, and empower all members of the Bend community to have a voice for the city's future. The City of Bend's support was a cornerstone funder of the Vision Action Plan. The plan was created by over 3,500 participants don't want to skew the results. 3,500 participants from a 17-month outreach campaign through events, action teams, interviews, focus groups, and surveys. While not perfect, the demographic of respondents accurately reflects the community's demographics. The Vision Action Plan is a strategic North Star for our region for the next 4 years and one that you all can trust.
And I'll jump in to say, largely the community's vision mirrors and matches the council's goals and vision the last few years, and I imagine in the future. And this is a really good thing. It means you all are doing a great job listening to the community, and there's a lot of alignment. We want to work together to accomplish these shared goals. Our goal here tonight is to share some of the priorities. The survey that you're seeing is from our leadership circle. So we have a group of board directors, advisors, and our Leadership Alliance partners that weighed in on the 28 strategies in the vision plan. What's most important for us to move the needle in the next 1 to 2 years? The top 5 priorities, again, no shock, but likely, but from the vision plan, number 1, innovative workforce housing. Number 2, expanding access to childcare. Those were the most heavily weighted results. Number 3, mental health and being for students. Number 4, improved expanded funded public transit. And 5, housing innovation and affordability and coalition. So like Tyler just mentioned, big emphasis on housing, of course. And while I believe you all are working on all these things, except maybe the mental health and being for students, I want to bring to your attention 5 other strategies that we'd like for you to consider in your goal setting, and happy to share these comments via email as well. The first being increased core area engagement and investment in the Bend core area. And with that, the Drake to Juniper pedestrian corridor, which is a connection from Drake Park to Juniper Park using the Hawthorne Bridge for bike ped roll. I think this is especially important for folks in the community that do not have a vehicle and do not drive. Third being community belonging. Help us move the needle on belonging widely by incorporating belonging into your community goals, actualizing the vision to turn Welcome Week into a year-round event. I think it would do a lot to align with work with St. Charles and other partners around belonging to include that in the goals. Number 4, community education on homelessness. You all have had your eyes set on this the last few years, so just want to applaud and thank the council for the work, and particularly the recent Cleveland Commons and the Homeless Person Memorial Day proclamation. Those are key steps in increasing education on our houseless neighbors and reducing stigma. And last, and importantly, neighborhood vitality and resilience. This is something we've heard from 2 neighborhoods tonight, Summit West and Aubrey Butte. There's an opportunity to work with the 13 neighborhood districts in Bend to actualize these goals and create effective two-way communication. While this is happening for some of the neighborhood districts, it's not happening for all of them. And Envision Bend is positioned in talking with Renee Mitchell and others to figure out where can we play a role in helping reach some of the districts that don't have as high of engagement. So just to conclude, thank you for the support of the Vision Action Plan, for hearing these comments and these prioritizations. For us to be effective in this vision together, we really need your help to continue to fold in the vision plan into your priorities and goals. We're here to help. And I know as we move into some unknown times, I just want to communicate to you all as our leaders that I have faith. I have faith in this community. I have faith in the vision plan. I have faith in you all as leaders to help us move into these unknown places and do it well. So thank you for your service and leadership. And we're here to support and help you actualize your visions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Harry Brooks.
Hello, good evening. I'm Perry Brooks, who as all know me by this point, a partner in Roost Development, and our group develops middle housing rental product throughout Central Oregon. We're here to request that City Council spur the development of missing middle housing in the urban core by supporting the use of the city's credit rating to back innovative financing tools. This will help develop the missing housing for the core area that other developers can also use to help build middle housing. The goal is critical to the equitable growth of the city and the core district, and the need for such housing in the community is evident to everyone. Given the ongoing challenging economic conditions for large-scale multifamily projects, city leadership and the support of out-of-the-box solutions is the most effective way to achieve both city and state priorities of creating missing middle housing and developing it in a climate-friendly way with greater density and urban infill.
Was David Mosey also here?
He's not.
Okay. And he's online. Is there an additional comment? You're here.
I'm the talking head.
You got it. Okay, great. Just want to make sure.
Yep, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Perry. Sarah Odom and Colleen, are you still here? Did you sign up? I did. Okay. Just making sure. Okay. And that's the end of our speaker list for tonight. We're going to go ahead and break. We're going to go into an executive session, and then we will be coming back at 7 for the regular meeting. So I will read our executive session language here. The Bend City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORADS 192-660-E to conduct deliberations with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made at an executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session. Let's start our executive session at 5:45 and if anyone wants to chat a little bit or mingle before then, let's just take a few minutes for that. And then let's meet in here at 5:45 to start the executive session. Okay, great, Kims. Thanks. Thanks you. Okay, we'll call to order this meeting of the Bend City Council. We're going to do our inspections and pronouns, please. Start with you, Councilor Platt.
Steve Fye, he, him.
Megan Norris, she, her. Megan Perkins, she, her. Melanie Keebler, she, her.
Ike Riley, he, him.
Ariel Mendez, he, him.
Gina Franzosa, she, her.
Great. And we are going to get right into our good of the order tonight. And we have a proclamation for human trafficking awareness. Councilor Riley is wondering.
And we have a couple folks here from the community that work on anti-trafficking work, and they're going to come up and make some remarks after I read the proclamation. Just a couple minutes here. Whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created equal with an inalienable right of freedom, and in 1865 added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, making slavery illegal. Whereas slavery within the United States today most often occurs as human trafficking, the illegal recruitment and movement of people for the purpose of sexual exploitation and forced labor. Whereas victims of human trafficking are typically lured or coerced to participate in various forms of exploitation, including commercial sex acts, drug processing and distribution, and other forms of forced labor, and are subject to physical and sexual abuse, forced drug use, and other forms of violence to keep them under the control of traffickers, stripping them of their freedom and dignity and leaving them trapped in a cycle of exploitation and vulnerability. Whereas the consequences of human trafficking can be devastating and long-lasting, including physical and psychological trauma, health problems, and social isolation. Whereas human trafficking is a worldwide epidemic with an estimated 27.6 million people trafficked on any given day in 2021, and 6.3 million people are victims of sex trafficking, the vast majority of whom are women and many are children. Whereas it is estimated that more than 190,000 people are trafficked in the United States each year, and Oregon has the 10th highest trafficking rate in the nation. And whereas from 2018 to 2019, the Oregon Department of Justice identified 746 victims of human trafficking across Oregon, including 48 in Deschutes County. And in 2024, the Anti-Trafficking Project provided services to 103 victims and survivors of human trafficking in Central Oregon. Whereas due to its isolating nature, many individuals locally and across the globe are unaware that trafficking exists in their community. And whereas we must all work together to end human trafficking and sexual exploitation around the world and in our local communities through education, awareness protection, and support of victims and prosecution of traffickers. And whereas several local organizations work to combat sex and labor trafficking in Central Oregon through education, prevention, intervention, and support services for survivors, including the Anti-Trafficking Project, Seroptimus International of Bend, and In Our Backyard. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Bend City Council opposes human trafficking in all its forms, encourages all Bend residents to learn about and do their part to prevent and intervene in trafficking, and does hereby proclaim January to be Human Trafficking Prevention Month in Bend.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the proclamation. Second that.
Right, moved by Pro Tem Perkins, second by Councilor Norris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And then we're going to have Jan Swander, who's the president of Seroptimus International of Bend, Cheryl Chicky, child survivor and executive director of In Our Backyard, and Brianne Barrett, program director of the Anti-Trafficking Project of JBAR-J here in Deschutes County. Come on up. Yeah. And as I said, they're each going to make a few remarks about the work that they do in the community. And we'll start with Bree.
Thank you so much for having us here today. My name's Bree Barrett. I'm the program director for the Anti-Trafficking Project. We serve victims and survivors of both sex and labor trafficking here in Central Oregon. This is Human Trafficking Prevention Month, so we're using this time just to bring awareness to the issue that is happening here in Central Oregon. Last year in 2024, we served just over 100 clients of sex and labor trafficking in Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties. Many of the survivors that we work with and also our survivor staff, our Survivor Advisory Council, have all said that if they had known that there was services available, they would have left their situation much sooner. And that is why our program is here and exists. We provide crisis intervention services as well as long-term case management to help them through that health and healing and to be able to get past that point in their life and have healing afterwards. We also run our Human Trafficking Task Force, which comprises of just over 30 agencies here in Central Oregon that are all committed to fighting human trafficking in our area.
Hi, all. My name is Cheryl Chicky. I'm executive director of In Our Backyard, and I sometimes wonder if this town knows that about 10 years ago, you started raising awareness through freedom stickers at In Our Backyard. It started here in Bend after a victim was recovered at a nearby gas station convenience store. And since then, it's become a national program. We have volunteers every day order freedom stickers off of our website for free. And over 1 million have been posted across every single state across the country. And over 40,000 convenience stores and gas stations have joined us. And it all started because a small group of Central Oregons against human trafficking got together, and that's what created In Our Backyard. Since then, we've created 7 prevention and awareness programs. We come along survivors, not only in the state of Oregon and Central Oregon, but across the United States when there are barriers to cross around certain jurisdictions and programs for states and services. On top of that, we are in the schools helping kids understand how to prevent human trafficking in their own lives. We reached about 2,000 students in Central Oregon over last year's school year, and we had 1 report of harm. We have to reach kids early. At the age of 10, I was being exploited. I went to school full time. I was not a runaway, but I sure wasn't home when I should have been. And there are signs that I think my teachers might have known something was off, but they never knew exactly what was happening. So we want to make sure, like Bree said, that survivors know through the hotline, through those freedom stickers posting, that there is help. They will reach out to that hotline themselves and be directed to the services in that area. but also that we're preventing human trafficking and talking about it. So I just want to express that having this month be Prevention Month really is what makes the difference. We have to talk about this hard topic and take the courage to link arms and fight this together.
Good evening. I'm Jan Swander, president of the Seroptimus of Bend, and I'm just really honored to be in the same room with these two other women. Seroptimus is a global volunteer organization that provides women and girls with access to education and training they need to achieve and gain economic empowerment. Today, we stand up to speak out about the prevalence and the danger of human trafficking and advocate to end the crime of human trafficking, a human rights violation, which affects more than 400 million people worldwide each year. Another thing that I just want to make sure that all of you know that you're invited, both council and audience, is that we have a program tomorrow between 12 and 1, and the program is an anti-trafficking and violence program. It's an informational talk, and Bree is one of our speakers that will discuss and educate, and it's a great place for people to learn how to recognize trafficking and what you can do about it. Again, it's Thursday, tomorrow, January 23rd, 12 to 1 p.m. It's in the classroom of the Historical Museum, which is at 129 Northeast Idaho Street. Please plan on attend, and I hope that I will see all of you.
Thanks so much. We're going to do a photo. I just wanted to say thank you for the work that all of your organizations do. And to just remind everybody, I think it's very sobering to hear about real statistics about this in our community, and that it does exist here, both the sex trafficking and the labor trafficking. And it's really important for people to be aware of that and pay attention and learn more. And if you want to see the links to these organizations, they're in the proclamation. You can go to the agenda for tonight and get links to their organizations there.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And I think there might be some other people in the audience that they're.
I agree. Too short. Okay, you ready?
You ready?
9 to 10. Hand him that camera. Getting close. You. I'm watching. You get back. 12. Jesus. The second fabric 19.
District content.
I mean, does it have to be? That's one.
I stay reading.
I think it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So we are going to move to our visitor section for public comments. We have nobody signed up online, but we have folks in person, so we'll go into those folks. Most of you, I recognize your name and your rules here, but just to reiterate, please address us as a bodies. Please don't use language or do any actions that disrupt the meeting. If you do break our rule, don't to stop and be clear. Don't think that will happen tonight. So we've got the timer up here today, and we're doing 2 minutes per person. It does not make a beep at the end. We're trying that out, okay? We're not sure. It's really loud for council purposes, but so if you hear the beep, that would be the end of your time. And yellow to let you know you have 30 seconds to wrap up, please. And so I'm going to call for your vote. Can you come up, let us know if you live in Bend or if you represent an organization, and then give us your. And I'll start with you, Gar. Perfect. And then come on out.
Good evening, members of Bend City Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Garth Finley, and I represent the hardworking members of the Western States Carpenters Union. I also fight for the unrepresented carpenters in our community that are trapped in a cycle of wage theft and abuse. I'm here to address the very topic and echo the proclamation that was read earlier: human trafficking in the construction industry. Construction work is the backbone of our growing community, but beneath the surface of this vital industry lies an alarming reality. Unscrupulous labor brokers and contractors exploit vulnerable individuals, and many of them are trafficked and forced to work in unsafe conditions for little or no pay. These practices are not just a violation of human rights, they undercut legitimate contractors and workers who are striving to earn an honest living within our city. In the recent years, we've seen cases nationwide where trafficked individuals are forced to work long hours, denied proper wages, and threatened with violence or deportation. This problem is not just happening elsewhere, it's a silent issue and is affecting our city and as demand for construction grows. So what can we do? First, we need stronger enforcement of labor laws. We urge the council to work with state and federal agencies to ensure the contractors operating in Bend adhere ethical hiring practices. Second, we need transparency in construction bidding and permitting process to ensure that projects go to reputable firms. Finally, I ask the council to consider funding public awareness campaigns and training for city inspectors to recognize signs of human labor trafficking on work sites. Every worker deserves the dignity of fair treatment. Just 30 more seconds. So, treatment of safe environment, addressing issues is not just a matter of justice. It's about ensuring that Bend remains a community where ethics and businesses thrive and human rights are protected. So thank you. And we will make a difference in this. Appreciate it, all.
Thanks for getting me started.
More, let's turn on.
It sounds like a call in a dentist office.
Very degrading.
Thank you for being here. All right. Let's have Keegan Chisholm, Mola.
Not yet. Next week.
Concern.
Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. My name is Keegan Chisholm, and I'm currently an IB student at Bend Senior High School. The goal of my speaking is to bring up the idea of a legal graffiti space in Bend, or a wall or tunnel where people in the city can freely paint and express themselves. This concept has already been implemented in Redmond by their Commission for Art in Public Places, and upon conducting interviews with the current and former chairholders for that organization, I've learned that it has noticeably reduced the amount of illegal vandalism in the city. As a student, artist, and citizen of Bend, I believe that the city could absolutely benefit from a space like this. There are many murals around town, and this public graffiti wall could serve as something similar, but created by and for the citizens of Bend. In my research, I've learned a lot about managing a space like this and the work required by the city, so if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact me. I've already emailed the City Council and have been in contact with Councilor Platt, who I've provided a slideshow with which I'm willing to present to other council members who are interested. Thank you for your time.
Keegan.
Thank you.
All right, Jim Elliott.
Trying to make a point here.
Not
so
gonna miss you.
thank you, Mayor Gilbert and the council members for providing me this opportunity to address the traffic safety in Bend. My name is Jim Elliott, and I live in Bend. Tonight, I'm here on behalf of the elementary students at Bear Creek Elementary School. I am a crossing guard at Bear Creek Elementary 3 mornings a week. This is my usual outfit and the stop sign that I use to stop cars so children can safely navigate the roundabout at Bear Creek and 15th Street. I would like to report that the drivers follow the blinking school warning lights that mandate 20 miles an hour, and that they stop for me and the students who are walking and biking to school. But that would not be true. Every day, drivers speed through the school zone despite the blinking lights. Despite my bright coat and my stop sign, and the fact that I'm bigger than a water buffalo, according to my daughter, drivers do not always stop at the crosswalks. Of course, when you have one hand on the steering wheel and the other on your cell phone, you may be distracted. I'm always glad for snow and ice during my duty time in the crosswalk. It is the only time that drivers slow, follow the speed limit, and do not accelerate through the roundabout. So I'm asking for a change in the school zone at Bear Creek, and actually all schools here in Bend. Return to the full-time school zones from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., as it is in other schools in the city. Install raised crosswalks at the roundabout, so drivers must slow down. Tighten the radius of the roundabouts to slow the drivers. These are commonly used engineering concepts that are employed in many cities in Oregon and elsewhere in this country. I'm often thanked by the students and the parents and the school staff for providing safe crossings, but I do not want thanks. What I want is that the people in power in the city and in the school district take charge of our streets. They need to direct the redesign of our streets so that our children can safely and independently travel to and from school and to parks and to their friends' houses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did see that Bear Creek just got money from ODOT for Safe Routes to School to do some work at Bear Creek.
But they
did.
can't respond.
No.
They're going to use that money. The school district is going to expand 2 parking lots at Bear Creek, almost half the playground. And what they're going to use that money for, in my understanding, is to replace the trail they're taking out to build a new trail when they double the size of the parking lot of the Bear Creek. So I'm not quite sure that makes us.
Your point still stands.
Yep.
Jim Christos, come on.
Madam Mayor and City Councilors, congratulations on those elected or re-elected. I hope you all had a chance to read my written submission. I'll be much briefer due to the time limitations. My name is Jim Christo, and I'm here representing myself, not my neighborhood district, although it can be a Bend citizen issue. A few months ago, I got into a minor fender bender track accident. No injuries, very little damage to the car. I encountered some black ice on Revere. As I turned onto it, nothing was unusual, but as I proceeded on the hill, I saw a car stopped in the middle of the road, and the lights were on, no hazard flashers, and I hit black ice and couldn't stop, and I hit her. All these, what I talked about, is state law violations. You can't stop in the middle of the road, and you have to use hazard flashers to warn drivers. Had they done that, maybe no accident. Police weren't called because of the lack of seriousness, and that may have been a mistake. The insurance company says I'm at fault because I rear-ended somebody. Nothing mattered except the fact that I rear-ended him. Not the violations of state law by the other driver, not the road conditions, nothing else mattered. But I had a dash camera installed in my car a few weeks before, and I called the police afterward and asked them to review the dash cam footage and give me an expert opinion on who was at fault. They refused, and that's why I'm here. And I've been in a long-running battle with my insurance company. They've raised my rates quite a bit, and over the next 10 years, it will cost me $14,000 because I lost the good driver discount. Now, I believe that having the police to be able to use their expertise in reviewing dash cam footage may have helped my situation. It may help other people in the same situation as I am. But by not doing it, they lost a wonderful opportunity to educate a driver. And I believe, Counselor, that's what they should be doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
team.
David Green.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name's David Green. I'm a resident of Bend in the River West Neighborhood District. I want to thank you for the really great project on Franklin that's coming up. It's going to really improve safety on this corridor for people driving, for people biking, and for people walking. It's going to have better crossings across Franklin. It's going to remove a westbound lane that people use to speed to get ahead of the other people when they approach the underpass. It's going to provide raised bike lanes along Franklin, and it's going to be really wonderful. A couple of weeks ago, I was biking along an arterial, and I came within inches of being hit by a car that was turning off the arterial onto the side street. Scared me to death. Unfortunately, the new design on Franklin won't prevent that kind of very common conflict. Keeping the bike lanes and sidewalks raised across those side streets along the arterial, which is supposed to be the priority street for traffic, would really help that situation. The people walking and biking across those side streets would be very much more visible, and cars would slow as they enter those adjacent neighborhoods, especially in the new neighborhood along 2nd Street that's supposed to be a walking and bikeable neighborhood. I'd ask you to really take advantage of this investment we're putting in along Franklin and finish the job. We're spending quite a lot of money. We're not quite there. It's really close. Putting in those raised crossings along those side streets would really improve and finish off that project. If that can't be done on Franklin, I'd really like you to make this a standard for bike lanes and sidewalks in the future along all of our collectors and arterials as those streets are rebuilt. So thanks for your time, and thanks for that project.
James Teeter.
Hi, I'm James Teeter, a Bend resident. I'm also here to talk about the raised crossings over local streets. I do want to clarify, I'm not talking about raised crossings across streets. I'm not talking about Franklin and 6th, where the high school students cross. I do think that should be raised, but what I'm talking about is what David's talking about, that sidewalks along arterials, collectors, and bike lanes should be continuous. And I do want to talk about Trenton Berger. Trenton Berger was killed last year biking on a sidewalk, and he wasn't killed because he wasn't wearing a helmet. He was killed because he was run over by a car. And the design of that intersection was heavily influencing the way that driver behaved, that they approached the intersection quickly, looked left to see oncoming traffic, and if there was no traffic, they would jut out. They were not looking for Trenton biking down the sidewalk, and that's a very unfortunate issue, and I'm not saying it's her fault, but it is a design issue that I believe the raised crossings could have prevented Trenton's death, and I honestly believe that. I do commend you for the work you're doing on Franklin and for the Bend Bikeways. I see it as a massive investment, a good one, but creating spaces where kids can bike along the street is great, but if every intersection is dangerous, every 200 feet, 300 feet, there's a dangerous intersection,
It's not a place where parents are going to say, yeah, just bike to school. It's cool. It's like a nice bike lane, but if the intersections don't match it, it's a lost investment. I would ask you to engage with the designers on Franklin. I know that if you guys don't speak up about this with Franklin, it's not going to happen. And that project is probably over $10 million. Would be a lost investment. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, Jack.
Debbie Frieden?
Good evening, City Council. I'm also here to talk about raised bicycle crossings. My name is Doug Dryden. I am a citizen and commuter here in Bend and also an e-bike father. My commute takes me from Bend's old district all the way over to this hospital medical district over near St. Charles, and I use the Franklin corridor whenever I'm making that commute. And I am really excited about the changes coming to the Franklin corridor and think that it will significantly improve the safety there. I would like to acknowledge the previous speakers, and I have the same concerns that drivers turning right and drivers coming out frequently, cars cross into crosswalks and hang out there while they are waiting for a chance to enter the roadway. That blocks that crossing and forces bikes and pedestrians to go around it. This type of separated bikeway is a little bit new in the design language of Bend. And cars reasonably, to some degree, but not necessarily need to be looking out for traffic that's crossing on all those intersections. Raised crossings have a lot of benefits. They provide a speed hump and decrease speeds. They indicate priority of the pedestrians and cyclists that are going through that intersection. And there's a lot decreased cars blocking that pathway. I've used these types of crossings in Portland, Orlando, New York City, other places. And I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes as a cyclist in the comfort of navigating a dangerous intersection. Thank you so much for your time. And I would also like to ask you guys to indicate to the planners that we should at least consider using these types of crossings. Thanks.
Thank you. That will conclude our visitor section. Thanks everyone for coming in tonight and giving us your input. Really appreciate that. We will move on to item number 4, the consent agenda.
To approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, moved by Councilor Mendez, second by Councilor Riley. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is approved, and that moves us to item number 5.
The adoption of 2025 City of Bend state legislative framework.
And Eric is just going to show us the changes we made in our work session.
Not so fast as a declaration before we.
Out of an abundance of caution, I'm declaring a potential conflict on this item. While the state legislature is ultimately the decision-making body on these legislative priorities, some of these items could financially impact my employer, Hayden Homes. Although I am declaring potential conflict, I am still permitted to participate in discussion and vote on this item.
No, thank you, Eric. Any?
Yes.
Can you make it a little bigger on the screen?
Can we make it bigger?
Yeah. Thank
you. Yeah.
So in the sustainable transportation infrastructure funding, so you can see the track changes there, geographically equitable and ensure cities' share of state funding is maintained or increased. And then language below about funding auctions and policies. I put the word or phrase remove barriers to address, Ori, what you were saying about the wayfinding and the recreation community. That kind of covers that. Yeah. And then we added safety. Yeah. So if you are ready to make a motion, we would just need to say as amended. Oh, great.
All right. Yep, we discussed earlier. Ready for a motion? I move to adopt the 2025 City of Bend state legislative priorities as amended.
I second that motion.
All right, moved by Representative Perkins, second by Councilor Mendez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. My 2 item number 6.
This is authorization to purchase 2 Pierce Velocity engines and 1 Pierce Velocity tiller ladder truck from Hughes Fire Equipment, and authorize the city manager to approve amendments for unanticipated equipment specification charges.
Riley and the Fire Chief Hand here.
If you do window tone instead of screen.
I'm the business fan.
How meetings.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. Todd Riley, Fire Chief, Ben Fire and Risk.
Mike Hanna, we operate as chief.
So we're here today because aging
fleet, and we're requesting to replace some of the equipment. And it is part of our maintenance plan for specifics on what we are requesting.
So we're requesting 2 engines and looking at the age of our fleet, the service intervals required, the hours and the mileage on all of the engines that we have in service today. It's time to replace 2 of those. It's part of our 5-year capital asset purchase plan. And we're also purchasing an additional ladder truck. We purchased one in 2000 and our reserve ladder truck is a 2003. Our frontline truck will become a reserve, and then this ladder truck will become our frontline truck. You'll notice it is a different style. It's a tillered apparatus. So looking at the complexity and height of the buildings and all of those buildings being put into our current built environment, the narrow streets, the desire for narrower streets, and the increased congestion, this will allow us additional reach and additional mover throughout the city. In addition to that, there are $520,000 in change orders. That is $160 per engine, and then $200 for the truck. And that's just to give us the opportunity to capitalize on improvements in technology and equipment that come out to the 4 to 5 year build time. So that's what the contingency is for.
So just to restate that, it takes 4 to 5 years to get these once we say we
want. Correct. Yeah. So the ladder truck is about 51 months and the engines are about 53 months from time of work.
Like Chief Hill mentioned, this is programmed into our 5-year vehicle equipment budget. We are going to put them on a 12-year debt service term. And once the debt is issued for these 3 apparatus, our total debt service will be $1.8 million annually. And this includes all of the debt that we already have today. Starting in FY26, we will have $500,000 reserved each year for that. And we are always in consultation with our very important partners of fleet to make sure that what we are buying is what they recommend. And so they walk us through. You don't make a purchase without talking to them first. So they were hand in hand with this decision. With that, we'd love to entertain.
Any questions from council? Platt?
Well, so Chief, this is a big purchase, right? And previously budgeted for it. So unsurprising that it's coming up now. It's also a long-term purchase and it's a gas vehicle, right? Or diesel vehicle. Did you consider any other options that something like a hybrid or an electric vehicle at all?
So the answer to that is yes. And that technology does exist. And I want to just reinforce to council that we look at the electric engines and for various reasons, we decide not to go with them. A couple of things. First is the electric engines that are on the market today, they are still hybrid. They have an electric engine, but they always still have a diesel motor in them. And that is so they can be certified through NFPA, which is the organization that certifies all of our apparatus. And secondarily, just cost per unit makes it right now prohibitively expensive. Just for the engine, you would add on $800,000 per unit. And the first thing we would need is the infrastructure in place to be able to charge these engines. Per station, the research that we did, it would be right around $200,000 per station. Now, could we phase this in and do one station and maybe one at the training center? Sure. But the point being is we're not ready yet. And then again, in consultation with fleet, our essential partners through this, they're not ready for an electric fire engine yet. Matter of fact, the training and equipment that they would need, again, would precede any engine purchase that we make. So we are a levy fire department, and we do go to the voters and say, we are the most efficient we can be. And we're only asking you for money because we simply cannot operate without additional funds. And so to justify that additional expense per unit, I just don't think. So with all of those and the combination of all of those answers, we decided it is not time for.
I appreciate you taking a look at it. Do you feel like in the long term, do you feel like that might be more of an option?
I think there's an inevitability that we're facing, right? I think the cost of these is going to come down. It would stand to reason that electric fire engines will be more affordable. But also with the infrastructure, as communities like ours are grappling with how do we electrify not only our buildings, but also the vehicles that are on the road, the fire department, we're just going to be part of it. It's not a no, it's just a not can.
Thanks for looking at it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the questions.
Any other questions from council?
I'm just curious, what happens to the old trucks? Then do you,
We'll sell them.
do you sell them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish they retain their value more than they do, but we'll sell them with the hours and miles that they have on them. And with that money, we will either put them towards the existing debt service so that we can see that we're issuing, or put them towards future apparatus purchases. So we won't hang on to stuff that we don't need to hang on to. And while it has value, we will get it out the door, because there are communities usually close by that benefit greatly from the apparatus that we place out of service.
Thank you. Okay. Good question. Any other questions before motion? Go.
I move to authorize the purchase of 2 Pierce Velocity engines in an amount not to exceed $2,740,317 and 1 Pierce Velocity tiller ladder truck at an amount not to exceed $2,254,139 from Hughes Fire Equipment Inc. and authorize the city manager to approve amendments adding up to an additional $520,000 for unanticipated equipment specification changes.
Second.
All right. Moved by Council Perkins, second by Council Riley. All those in favor?
Nice.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Julie, that truck in 5 years. Long ways. All right. Well, that was the last business item for the council meeting. So we're moving on to council action and reports. Before we get into this, I wanted to actually just ask the group something. There has been some discussion, the mayor for 10 brought this up, about potentially moving our council action and reports closer to the beginning of the meeting. And that would give opportunity for us all to be fresh. Remember what we've done. Sometimes, new councilors, you may have observed this, it is like 10:30 or 11, and we're all very tired and we're forgetting what we've done. And I think it's important, especially after the advisory body summit, that we're giving some good information about meetings that we've been to and having the opportunity to make sure that we're all hearing those things that are happening, especially at the advisory committees. I wanted to bring that up to the body, and if that's okay, we'll work on moving that up in the agenda. We don't want to be huge and wordy. We're about to get to our business, but it just gives them visibility and an opportunity to have the public see that too. So
There will be other people in the room.
Good morning. It was okay leaving the city manager's record meeting down lower, but getting that council. So I'm not hearing any opposition for that. So being Bergman that project. I don't think we have any subcommittee that has met yet. We just assigned those today. There was one letter that came up that I forwarded to council all just about the direct paying and climate action that I'd just like to sign on to and solidarity and trying to keep that going is really important. So unless anyone had a problem with that, I'm going to go ahead and do that. We don't have any other appointments. And yeah, we can start with you, Councilor Franzosa. Have you watched this before? Do you feel comfortable giving your report? And it might not be too much because you just were sworn. Yeah.
I enjoyed reading all the materials for the meeting. It's just going to be self-reflection.
Yeah. You can also pass. You don't have to. Yeah. For this one.
That's all I have to say. So.
Okay. Anything Councilman did?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about a couple things. One, I went to the Cleveland Commons, which I think several of us were at, for the new permanent supportive housing in the community, 34 units. It's just very exciting to see that project coming to fruition, and really appreciate all the hard work that everybody did in all kinds of different organizations, private and public, to make that happen. It's a really important addition to our community. It's the first east side of the Cascades in the state. And I wanted to mention 2 other things. I went to a Latino Community Association event about knowing your rights, and just wanted to thank them for what they're doing in the community to support our Latinx and immigrant community. I think their work is particularly important right now, and it was a good learning experience on way to support people. I also attended a very informal social kind of gathering that the Syrian community did in our community, and I didn't really know that there was much of a Syrian community to celebrate the changes going on in Syria right now, and in a hopeful way that we could have some positive change there. And it was just fun to be there and eat some good food and meet some new people and hear stories about people in our community again who are connected to another part of the world.
Great. All right.
So, yeah, I've forgotten most of what's gone on in the last month, but one thing to highlight, and I'm sure Mayor you'll do as well, is the Western Governors Association meeting was here in Bend. And what I really got out of it, especially on the first day, was that we're doing a lot of really good work here in Bend. And the governor was extremely complimentary about that housing work. And it was really great to talk to people from other Western states about how they're managing, particularly in communities similar to ours, resort tourist towns, how they're managing this housing crisis. And the other thing is just a little update on the Coordinated Housing Response Office, because I don't think I have done an update since our meeting in December. And we officially agreed to evolve into the Regional Housing Council meeting or council over a period of time. We will be meeting as the Coordinated Housing Response Office body, directly before the Regional Housing Council meeting once a month. Other people will be able, anyone who wants to can attend. We still do public comments, all of that. But we will be meeting in that specific body for a while, and with the intent of eventually evolving into a more regional model, which is something we talked about during the legislative advocacy agenda today. So that was exciting to finally come to some sort of conclusion to that, because we've been talking about that for what?
And two more, and one other change: the two ex officio members now will become voting members in a tip towards a regional effort. So the Community Action Coalition, which is Neighbor Impact, will be basically promoted from an ex officio to a voting seat, and then the Homeless Leadership Coalition will also be. So we'll have more of that regional expertise and sort of vantage point to start moving in directions.
And I'm really excited about this model. And, with the point in time count, I'm hearing that, early news that some of the more rural communities in Crooked Jefferson County will probably be because their data is getting better. We'll see an increase in homelessness in this point in time count. I think there might be a renewed interest in being a part of a regional solution. Yeah, we'll try. And then how those meetings, they're moving, I think. We're still moving. They're Mondays from 5 to 6:30. Somebody talked about, I think, 3:30 to 4. I don't know. We're still. I will let you all know.
Okay. Yeah, I also went to the Cleveland conferencing, and I just to echo is so exciting to see, and we just need to do more. We need to do a lot more. And I also spoke to the 6th grade class at Cascade Academy. They had lots of amazing questions, and they're just leaders in the making, just really trying to figure out and bring some good suggestions. We talked a lot about, where's Renee? Googly eyes. Googly eyes. There are a lot of thoughts about people that might have some sort of criminal offense should be charged with actually taking them down, so you don't have to pay. So yeah, it's a very creative idea, but it was really nice to see. The Environment and Climate Committee did meet. We have some new board members. I think we had 3 new board members, so that they could barely fit around the dais, so we're fully packed there. And then Mark Buckley will be the new chair, and then Laura Tabor will be the vice chair. We talked a little bit about the outreach and education engagement plan. Our new staff person, Megan, has been leading that effort. And in particular, just talked about timeline for social media, posting 1-pagers specific to the priorities on that website, which I think will be really good. We talked about the timing for the Energy Navigator program, which will be February or sometime. And then a sustainability newsletter, which will start being developed in March. And then we also had a larger discussion about the climate action plan and goals, and as we relate to goal setting. And so there are a lot of goals. There's 74 climate action related goals. So trying to prioritize those, which the body has tried to do before, but I think is acknowledging and had hit some hiccups, but I think they're acknowledging it needs to happen again, to maybe have some goals that are in the next 2 years, and then have goals that are 3 to 5 years. So prioritizing those, they are acknowledging will be really important for us and to help advise council.
We had a very well-spoken Ben High student here this evening, and I'm looking forward to meeting with a bunch of those students over at Ben High. They just got great ideas about how to make a community a little better. So it's just really fires you up, meeting with young, engaged folks like that. So I'm looking forward to that meeting coming up.
Great. I attended the COCO, which is the Central Oregon Cities Organization meeting last week. So some changes there. Mayor Lutt is now the mayor of Sisters. They do the selection amongst themselves. So she was selected as the mayor, which was great. The new mayor of Lapine was there as well. And then, of course, Ed Fitch was reelected mayor of Redmond. And then there were some folks from Culver and some other places too. We just had our initial meeting. We'll be doing selection of chair and things at the next meeting, and talked about a lot about water, which is the continued main issue that COCO works together on. There's actually a bill or two that the group is itself supporting. And then we all gave our own priorities, like to preview the draft that we approved tonight, and we'll continue to work together. It's a long ways. All right. Well, the last business item for the go to a verb. It's short. It's a long ways. All right. Well, the last business item for the council meeting. So we're moving on to council action and reports. Before other folks in the building, you heard Eric mention Pam Marks. She's the housing chair who knows us well, and we always go and talk to her about what she's working on and advocate for what we need. So I'll be doing that next week. everybody recorded for the podcast, right? That was fun. Yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah. And then I had UDBA met this morning as their media liaison. I went to that meeting. The one thing I wanted to highlight that we're going to be seeing soon is they are looking to join the Main Street America program. So they have a need for us to provide a resolution, a letter in support of that. And so that'll be coming to us on our agenda. But that also is imposing some requirements on men on setting some goals and having a work plan. So they did a lot of brainstorming around that, around beautification and safety and other things that they can work on in the EID. Obviously, parking was a topic that's, I'm sure, at every meeting, but there is actually a meeting of the Downtown Parking Advisory Committee tomorrow. So that continues to be worked on with staff and through DBVA. So I look forward to continuing to meet with them. I think I have one more thing, but and then I'm just going to throw it over to Eric, and maybe you can start, Eric, because I was on our website and I see we have our wildfire preparedness fact.
Yeah.
This online now.
Yes, I think with the fires in LA, and unfortunately, it sounds like things took a turn worse today. I think just everybody's concerned, myself included, of just how we see that destruction and our concern for our own community. And so we heard some of that in the comments from the listening session. So what we have done is put out frequently asked questions just to really try to respond to the most pressing concerns, issues that the community has. And so that is on our website. So as the mayor mentioned, you go onto our banner and you'll see it right there. You can also just type in the search word wildfire preparedness and you'll get all of that information. We have a whole communications plan where some of that information we'll put out in digestible bits over social media posts and things. But just I think the big piece to remember, we do our part as the city and we have plans. We'll probably have some council goal items. As suggested, I think that's very much in alignment with what we're going to be proposing as our leadership team to council around evacuation plans. We always say there's not one evacuation plan. It's fires are very dynamic here in Bend. It's not, this is where some of those differences occur between what happens in a coastal community or in a canyon city versus our situation in Bend. However, we think that there's more work that can be done there. I think there's also opportunities to look at our hardening of our codes, as discussed earlier. And then I think just community education and awareness. And it really starts, and I really want to emphasize this point, where emergency preparedness starts with individual action and preparedness. And a lot of that information is on our website around go bags, signing up for Deschutes alerts, just being really aware of your own situation, your own agency to protect yourself and your family. So just wanted to get that message out and maybe just pause and see if there's any questions. I think we've shared a lot of that information to council. It's out in the community, but please keep the questions coming, ideas. This is a great time because it does converge with our council goals as we look to always improve and respond to community concerns.
Yeah, I think we heard tonight and we're going to continue to hear, I think, concerns about this, especially leading into fire season. I think it's just hard for people to hear. I can't give you a map that's the right way to go every time. It's just really hard. I can't. And I think someone wrote us today, please eliminate the risk of fire. We cannot do that. I wish we could, but I think this is a great first step in just that communication piece. And if folks haven't looked at it, go look at this site and maybe push it out to people because it has all the questions we've been receiving are there. We'll put more up if we get more, right? So
and one other point to just make on the operational level, we have an emergency management program with staff, which is something is fairly new to the city. It's typically emergency management is at that county level. And we do a lot of coordination with the county, but we've done a lot more as a city organization with Carrie Carl as our director, and that includes tabletop exercises. We've had many. We actually have one next week that is planned to simulate large wildfire operationally, how we would manage that with law enforcement, transportation. So we practice. I think that's important for the community to know that we don't just wait for something to happen and react, that there's a lot of internal work, training, real life exercises, et cetera, that takes place on this and many other types of emergencies we face as our climate's changing, as our world is just getting more complex and dynamic to be able to adapt. So it's more about adaptation and resilience. All right. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is permit extensions. As city council, not the new council, remembers about a year ago with the uncertain economic times, high interest rates, a lot of projects that were permitted. So the developer went through entitlements, got all the approvals that they need, and they said, hold on a second, the market isn't quite there for my project to pencil. And we saw that dynamic happen, and we responded with an extension last year. So there was a 1-year extension that was granted. between last January and June. So people had a period to file an extension. They did. And Colin can speak to more detail on this, but we had a number of them. We were coming up upon that. We think it's a good idea to offer another 6-month extension. Our code allows for up to 2 years of an extension. My request is not for you to make a decision tonight, but it's to have your permission to bring forward a resolution to extend the program at the next council meeting. I want to make sure there's general interest in that concept. The actual decision would be in 2 weeks.
So just for clarification then, because I should probably remember, but I don't. The code allows us to do this, and we took advantage of it for a year, and we can do it for up to another year.
Correct. And what I think we'll recommend is a 6-month.
And so it would be from whatever date if there was extended to March, it would be until September.
Yeah, something like Colin. Yeah, do you want to I want to make sure on.
Thanks. Hello, City Council. Colin Stevens, Community and Director. So what we did the last time, under the code, the council was authorized to get me the authority to give up to a 2-year extension for planning approvals. And then we mirror the engineering and building permit approvals to match the planning approval as well. So we give them a whole host of approvals. What we did in January of 2024 was opened a 6-month window to allow people to apply for this between January and June, and then gave them a 1-year extension. We are hearing from folks that they would like to do that again. So we're thinking of doing a similar thing. And this time it's housing projects, residential projects that we're hearing from. And so we think definitely with the market conditions for housing right now, we think it's a good idea to do that one more time. And if I come back in February at your next meeting, I could do from February through July. So give a 6-month window, similar thing, and then let them do another 1 year. So either people who took advantage of the 1 year or people who didn't take advantage of the 1 year could still take a good another year. But that would be consistent with the code because the code does allow for an up to a 2-year extension. So that's what I'm.
And that did, if they applied last year for their extension on April 1st, it would be for a whole year, another whole year from them.
Correct.
Good.
Sounds like their support to bring that back.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
And that's it.
We're going to adjourn the Bend City Council meeting and to a verb. To shore chair work.
Okay, so and I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Bend Urban Renewal Agency. First order of business is to approve the minutes from December 18th and January 8th.
I think to approve the December 18th, 2025 and the January 8th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? And opposed? Passes unanimously. And then we have a couple of appointments to the Core Area Advisory Board. 2 reappointments, Corey Harlan and Dale Van Valkenburg, and 3 new appointments, Don Coffer, Hank Kamakawa, and James Teeter. Do you have a motion for that?
I move to approve the appointments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And then I hereby adjourn. What you do, Big?
Sure, go for it.
I know.